Halfway through a love ballad at the Las Vegas Hilton, Elvis Presley froze mid-chord. His eyes caught someone he hadn't seen in years, Priscilla. The guitar slipped from his hands, crashing onto the stage floor as 2,000 fans fell silent. Security tensed, the band waited, and Elvis did something no one expected that night. Las Vegas Hilton, December 3rd, 1975. The lights burned gold over a sea of sequined jackets and clinking glasses. 2,000 people filled the International Theatre, their chatter bouncing against mirrored walls as if the room itself were alive. The house band tuned up, a gentle hum beneath the glitter. Elvis Presley stood behind the curtain, one hand resting on his white Gibson, the other brushing the sweat from his temple. He'd done this 1,000 times, but tonight felt heavier, like the air carried a secret he didn't yet know. Joe Esposito leaned in close, voice low over the crowd's rising roar. "Ready, E?" Elvis nodded, a small half-smile. "Always." The spotlight swept the curtain. The opening brass hit. Then thunder. The crowd leapt to its feet, their applause a living thing. Elvis stepped out, white jumpsuit gleaming beneath the stage lights, rhinestones catching fire in the glow. Cameras flashed like lightning. He started with CC Rider, easy and confident. Every move rehearsed, every look deliberate. But beneath that calm rhythm was a flicker of something restless. Maybe it was the fatigue. Maybe it was the loneliness that followed him even in front of thousands. The band shifted into "And I Love You So." The tempo slowed. His voice softened, smooth but heavy, like he was singing to a memory rather than a melody. Halfway through the verse, something changed. His gaze drifted to the left side of the audience, 12 rows back, aisle seat. A shape, a face. For a moment, he thought his mind was playing tricks, the light bending through cigarette haze. But no, it was her, Priscilla, the same soft posture, the same poise she'd always carried, as if the room bent around her. She wasn't supposed to be there. She hadn't been in that world for years. Yet there she sat, silent, eyes fixed on him like she'd never left. His hand faltered on the guitar neck. The next chord came late, then wrong. A faint metallic twang broke the illusion. Charlie Hodge shot him a confused look from the side. Elvis didn't return it. His entire focus was locked on her. The crowd didn't notice at first. They thought it was part of the act. But as his fingers slipped again, the strap loosened. And then, with a soft thud, the Gibson fell. The sound wasn't loud, but the silence that followed was deafening. The king of rock and roll, known for control, perfection, power, just stood there, empty-handed. No one knew if it was an accident or something deeper. A single cough echoed from the back row. Someone whispered, "Is he all right?" In that suspended moment, the show, the legend, the image, all paused. Just Elvis and Priscilla, caught in a space too small for 1,000 witnesses. Have you ever seen someone's entire past rush back into their eyes in real time? What would you do if the person you once loved appeared when you least expected, when the whole world was watching? Elvis took a breath, his jaw tight. For a second, it looked like he'd reach for the guitar, but he didn't. Instead, he stepped forward, off his mark, closer to the edge of the stage. The audience didn't know it yet, but this was the moment the legend turned human. He looked toward her again, and with that single glance, everything that followed became history. The air in the Hilton Theatre turned thick enough to taste. The band, unsure whether to keep playing, let the final chord of "And I Love You So" fade into a trembling hum. Elvis stood motionless, the microphone still in his hand, eyes fixed on the woman sitting 12 rows back. The audience waited for the famous grin, the quick recovery, the usual line that would reset the show, but nothing came. Charlie Hodge took half a step forward from the wings, whispering, "E, you good?" Elvis didn't answer. He tilted his head slightly, as if trying to make sure the figure before him wasn't a ghost. Priscilla didn't move. Her hands rested neatly in her lap, a faint shimmer from her bracelet catching the stage light. The sound crew froze. You could hear someone's camera flash pop, once, then twice. The clicking echoed like a clock counting down to something no one could predict. For a man whose timing was legend, Elvis suddenly had no rhythm. He took a single step forward, the spotlight following automatically, catching the sequins on his suit and scattering them across the first few rows like falling stars. The crowd started to clap, trying to fill the silence, thinking it was all part of the act. But he raised his hand slightly, and the applause died. "Hold it," he said softly, barely audible through the mic. His voice wasn't commanding now. It was cautious, almost afraid. Security near the front exchanged glances. One of them, Red West, shifted his stance, unsure whether to intervene or let it play out. Joe Esposito leaned in from backstage, whispering into a radio, "Stay put. Don't spook him." The stage lights dimmed slightly as the lighting tech hesitated, unsure if they were watching an emotional breakdown or a miracle. Elvis's eyes never left Priscilla. She looked calm, but her lips trembled just once, just enough for him to see. That single tremor broke the dam. He set the microphone carefully on its stand, hands shaking only slightly. The crowd gasped as he turned and started walking, not toward the band, not toward the wings, but toward the steps at stage right. This wasn't in any script, not even close. Every footstep echoed, leather boots on polished wood, thud, 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 each one louder than the last. The sound man's hand hovered over the volume fader, not daring to move. Charlie whispered, "Oh Lord, he's really doing it." Have you ever seen someone abandon the thing that defines them, just to reach for what once made them feel alive? How far would you go to close a chapter that never truly ended? He reached the edge of the stage and paused. The crowd leaned forward as one body, 2,000 breaths held. Then, with no hesitation left, Elvis stepped down from the platform and into the aisle. Security took a half step forward, but Joe's voice cut through the earpieces. "No one touches him." People parted instinctively, the way the sea parts for something sacred. The king was walking through his kingdom, stripped of ceremony. No lights, no soundtrack, just the echo of his own footsteps and the faint hum of the air conditioner. Priscilla stood, slowly, gracefully. The years between them collapsed like paper. Up close, Elvis could see that her eyes were wet, not from sadness, but from recognition. She hadn't come to cause a scene. She hadn't expected to be seen at all. But now, the moment had found them both. A woman in the second row whispered, "This can't be real." It was. Elvis stopped a few feet from her. The audience could see the tremor in his hands, the rise and fall of his chest, and for a second, it felt like time hesitated, waiting for his next move. He looked at her, the way you look at someone who once knew every version of you. And the silence that followed was so total, it became holy. Then, in front of everyone, Elvis reached out, and the words he spoke next would echo far beyond that night. For 3 eternal seconds, the theater didn't breathe. The spotlight haloed them both. Elvis, still in his rhinestone suit, and Priscilla, motionless beneath it. Every flashbulb seemed afraid to go off. 2,000 people had paid to see a concert. None of them expected to witness a man's heartbreaking, then healing in real time. Elvis's hand trembled slightly as he reached out. Priscilla met it halfway. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't staged. It was human, quiet, trembling, undeniable. Her fingers brushed his palm, and the crowd exhaled as one. A few whispered his name. Others simply wiped their eyes. The band still stood frozen on stage. Charlie Hodge had his hand on the guitar stand, waiting for some cue that never came. Joe Esposito whispered backstage, "Let him be. Whatever this is, it's real." Elvis leaned closer. His voice dropped to something only she and the microphones could catch. "You look just like the day we said goodbye." The words weren't scripted. They slipped out raw, heavy with 10 years of silence. Priscilla's eyes welled instantly. She smiled. A small, fragile thing that looked like forgiveness. And then came the moment people still argue about. Some say he whispered, "I never stopped loving you." Others claim it was, "I still see you every night before I sleep." No one really knows. The only proof is a bootleg cassette, recorded by a fan sitting near the back, where you can hear the crowd gasp before the tape fuzzes into static. He took a deep breath and looked around, as if remembering for the first time where he was. "Folks," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "Sometimes the music stops for a reason." Sudden silence. Then, soft applause, hesitant at first, then swelling. Have you ever stood face to face with the one person who taught you what love costs and realized the price was worth it? How do you keep singing when the song you're living is ending? Priscilla whispered something back, close enough for the cameras to catch only a glance of her lips. Some claim she said, "You'll always be my song." Others swear she simply mouthed his name. Elvis smiled. Not the stage smile, not the practice one for the flashbulbs, but something smaller, purer. He gently let go of her hand, looked up toward the spotlight, and motioned for Charlie. "Bring me that mic," he said. The band stirred. The sweet inspirations exchanged nervous glances. Elvis took the microphone, turned back to the crowd, and said, "Let's start over." The drummer hit a soft rim tap. The piano played a single chord. Then, without the guitar, Elvis began to sing "Can't Help Falling in Love." A cappella at first. His voice, stripped of instruments, filled the Hilton like light pouring through stained glass. And the miracle? The crowd didn't cheer. They listened. Every note hung suspended in air as if daring the moment to move on. As he sang, Priscilla sat back down, tears on her cheeks, mouthing the lyrics. The camera flashes started again, but now they looked like falling stars, marking the end of something beautiful. The final line came soft, barely above a whisper. "Take my hand, take my whole life too." He looked toward her as he said it, "For I can't help falling in love with you." The ovation came like thunder, rolling across the hall. People stood crying, clapping, shouting his name. Elvis didn't bow. He just nodded once, a man grateful and undone. The curtain didn't fall. It didn't need to. The legend had already turned into something greater, something human. Backstage, when the lights dimmed and the noise faded, Priscilla waited by the door, and Elvis, still trembling, walked straight toward her. The applause still thundered through the walls, but backstage the air was different, thin, quiet, reverent. Elvis stepped through the curtain, the sweat still glistening on his forehead, his hands shaking from something far greater than performance. Joe Esposito moved in to hand him a towel, but Elvis waved him off. "Give me a minute," he murmured, his voice rasped by emotion more than exhaustion. Priscilla stood near the dressing room doorway, framed by the amber glow of the hallway bulbs. The light caught her hair, that same familiar chestnut shine, and for a moment he saw her as she was the day they married, young, nervous, radiant. Neither spoke first. The noise of the crowd outside softened, replaced by the low hum of the air vent and the muted clatter of stagehands breaking down equipment. A world was moving on, but the two of them stood still in its center. "Elvis," she finally said, her voice soft but steady. "I didn't come here to cause a scene." He half smiled, leaning against the wall, as if his body needed something solid to hold him up. "Didn't have to, Scylla. Just showing up did it." Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "I just wanted to see you sing again, to see if it still feels the same." He chuckled under his breath, shaking his head. "It never feels the same, honey. That's the curse of it." There was no accusation in his tone, only truth. Behind him, Charlie Hodge peeked around the corner, but quietly withdrew, motioning for everyone to stay back. Joe whispered to Red West, "Give them the room." For the first time in years, Elvis and Priscilla were alone without the noise of cameras or questions. Just two people who'd built something beautiful, then watched it crumble. "You didn't have to sing that," she whispered. "I did," he replied simply. "I couldn't leave it unsaid again." He sank into the chair near the vanity, his reflection flickering beneath the bright mirror lights. The face looking back wasn't the king. It was just a man trying to make peace with himself. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "if we could have done it differently?" He looked at her reflection in the mirror. "Every day," he said softly. "But maybe it had to fall apart for us to learn what it really was." Have you ever stood in front of someone who once knew your soul better than you do, and realized you'd both grown into strangers who still cared? What would you give for one more chance to speak the truth you once swallowed? The hum of the arena shifted. The next act was warming up somewhere distant. The moment was running out. Priscilla stepped closer, resting a hand on the vanity. "You were brave tonight," she said. "Letting them see the real you." He smiled faintly. "Funny thing is, I think they always wanted that more than the music." She leaned down, brushed his cheek with her hand. A gentle, almost motherly touch. "Take care of yourself, Elvis." His eyes closed for a second and he whispered, "You too, Scylla." The door opened slightly. Joe peeked in, eyes full of apology. They're waiting for you out front." Elvis nodded, forcing a breath. "Tell 'em I'll be there." Priscilla hesitated at the threshold. The sound of distant cheers echoed again, like ghosts of the moment they'd just lived. She turned once more. "That song, it still means what it used to." He looked up, and for the first time in the night, his smile reached his eyes. Then it was worth dropping the guitar for. As she disappeared down the corridor, Elvis picked up the fallen Gibson from the floor, its strap broken, and whispered, "Guess you and me both fell tonight." Outside the dressing room, the crowd still waited. Even as the curtains closed and ushers began clearing tables, no one wanted to leave. People clung to the edge of something they couldn't quite define, like they'd all witnessed a sacred accident. A murmur rolled through the lobby, fans whispering versions of what they'd seen. He dropped the guitar. He walked off stage. He spoke to her, and somehow every retelling sounded like gospel. Backstage, Elvis lingered in the hallway, still holding the damaged Gibson by its neck. The strap had torn clean off. Its body bore a small dent, barely visible, but to him it looked like a scar. Charlie Hodge joined him, eyes cautious but kind. "You okay, E?" Elvis nodded, though his voice trembled when he said, "Yeah, I didn't expect to feel all that again." Charlie gave a half smile. "Nobody did, man. But maybe they needed to see it." Elvis looked out toward the corridor leading to the main stage. The muffled roar of the audience still seeped through the walls. "They're still out there?" Charlie nodded. "No one's leaving. They're waiting for you." He ran his fingers over the guitar's strings. One snapped, dangling loose like a thread of unfinished business. He took a breath, then walked back toward the stage entrance. The security guard straightened, unsure whether to stop him or salute. Joe Esposito met him halfway, whispering, "If you go out again, make it quick. You've already given them a lifetime." Elvis smiled faintly. "Then maybe they deserve one more minute." The lights dimmed again as he stepped back into view. The crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, the kind that hit like a wave and pulled everything else away. But instead of picking up another song, Elvis lifted his hand, asking for quiet. And miraculously, it came. The entire Hilton, 2,000 people, fell still. He set the broken guitar on the stool beside him, its neck leaning gently against the mic stand. "This old thing's taken me through a lot of nights," he said softly. "Guess tonight it decided to quit on me, or maybe it was just trying to tell me something." A few nervous chuckles drifted through the dark, but he smiled. "Sometimes you don't know how heavy something is until you drop it." Pattern breaker. The crowd went dead silent again. He looked down, as if addressing the floor more than the fans. "You saw someone out there tonight who's been a part of my story from the start. And for a second, I remembered who I was before all this." A murmur of emotion rippled through the seats. Someone near the back shouted, "We love you, Elvis!" He chuckled softly. "Thank you, honey. You know, love's a funny thing. It don't always leave, even when it should." He lifted the mic again. "Now, I'm not going to sing another song tonight. I just want to thank you for being part of something real." And then, quietly, from somewhere near the front, a woman began to hum "Can't Help Falling in Love." Just one voice. Then another joined. Then 10, then hundreds, until the whole crowd was singing the melody back to him. Elvis didn't move. He just listened, eyes glassy, hand over his chest. The sound wasn't perfect, but it was honest, trembling with love. Have you ever felt a room sing for you, not because you're famous, but because they understand you? What does it mean when the crowd carries the song you can't finish? As the final line faded, "For I can't help falling in love with you," Elvis bowed his head. For once, no spotlight chased him. He was simply there, part of the crowd he'd once ruled. The applause returned, but softer now, respectful, reverent, like a goodbye wrapped in gratitude. He picked up the broken guitar, pressed his lips against its neck, and whispered, "We'll play again, old friend." Then, without another word, he walked off stage. Behind him, a single blue scarf fluttered from the mic stand, left behind by a fan and the stage. Light caught it just long enough to look like it was waving. Farewell. The Hilton showroom was empty by 2 a.m. Chairs were overturned, glasses stacked, the smell of cigarette smoke and spilled bourbon lingering in the air. Yet somehow, the room still felt alive, like it was replaying that one impossible night on a loop. Stagehands whispered about it as they packed cables. One said he dropped it like his heart fell out. Another swore he saw a tear hit the guitar before Elvis left. Upstairs, in the quiet of his suite, Elvis sat on the edge of the bed. The broken Gibson leaned against the wall beside his boots. On the table lay a folded napkin, the one Priscilla had placed in his hand before she left. In her handwriting, only 5 words, "You still sing with truth." He read it again and again, the ink blurring where his thumb had brushed too hard. For years, he had filled stadiums, drowned in applause, and forgotten what silence sounded like. But tonight, he'd remembered, and it terrified him as much as it healed him. Charlie Hodge knocked gently on the door. "E, you need anything?" Elvis smiled faintly. "Nah, Charlie. Got everything I need right here." On the bedside table, a tape recorder clicked softly. The bootleg someone had handed him from the audience. He pressed play. The hiss of the crowd filled the room, then the silence before the whisper. Then, that shared moment when every voice in the Hilton became one. He closed his eyes and listened. Not as a star, but as a man who had finally learned to stop performing for love and start feeling it again. Have you ever realized too late that the moments that break you are the ones that make you real? He leaned back, whispering to no one. Guess that's what music's for. To make you remember who you were before the lights. Outside, the Las Vegas Strip burned bright as ever, but for once, the king slept peacefully, not to applause, but to the quiet hum of his own heart. Years later, fans still argue about what he whispered that night, but those who were there say it wasn't words that changed them, it was the silence that followed. Decades later, that night still lives in whispers. The Hilton staff keeps a small brass plaque backstage, simple, unpolished. It reads, December 3rd, 1975, the night the music stopped for love. Tour guides pointed out to fans who hush when they pass, as if the air still carries that heartbeat of silence. Charlie Hodge kept the dented Gibson until his last days. It rests now behind glass at Graceland, strings replaced but one still left loose, exactly as Elvis left it. Some say the loosened string symbolizes that love doesn't always need tuning. Sometimes it's the imperfection that makes it unforgettable. Elvis never spoke publicly about that night. He didn't have to. The moment became folklore, proof that behind every legend is a man who dared to pause when the world demanded motion. Maybe that's why fans still talk about it, not because he dropped a guitar, but because for the first time, the king let his crown fall with it. And in that small act of letting go, he reminded everyone watching that even the greatest performers are, at their core, beautifully human. Maybe that's what made that night unforgettable, because when Elvis let the guitar fall, he showed us that sometimes breaking the rhythm is the only way to find the truth. If this story moved you, share it forward. Somewhere someone might need the reminder. Even legends are allowed to be human.